In the lavish neighborhood of New York, Simon, a diligent and caring husband, devoted himself entirely to his work and making his wife, Susan, happy. Simon had been dreaming of working as a mechanical engineer since he was a young boy. He was endlessly fascinated by the way machines worked. After years of dedication and hard work, he owned one of the biggest mechanical engineering firms in the country. As a devoted husband and skilled engineer, Simon poured his heart and soul into his work and marriage. He was always seeking to bring a smile to Susan's face. Simon and Susan had been married for 8 years and had a happy and loving relationship. But lately, Simon had noticed that Susan changed. She was becoming ungrateful, distant, and seemed to have lost interest in him. She would avoid talking to him and become angry over the smallest of things. Despite Simon's unwavering efforts, Susan seemed eternally dissatisfied. Simon worked tirelessly to provide for them both, taking on the sole responsibility of being the breadwinner. He longed to see his wife content and at peace, and he was willing to do whatever it took to achieve that. One day, after a difficult morning, Simon decided to find out what was wrong with their relationship. He started by asking her what was wrong, but she just said nothing was wrong and not to worry about it. He knew this wasn't true, so he decided to ask her friends for advice. One of Susan's friends told him that she thought Susan was feeling lonely and emotionally neglected because he was always busy with work. Simon knew that the answer she gave him was false, because he has been working from home for the last 6 months and he rarely left the house. Simon also made sure to plan numerous activities to keep Susan entertained and not lonely. Last week was their 8-year anniversary, and to celebrate, Simon arranged a romantic evening at one of the most exclusive restaurants in town. He rented a limousine and was dressed to the nines, but when he opened the door to pick up Susan, she was wearing a simple top and jeans. When they reached the restaurant, Simon went all out and put forth every effort to make it a truly memorable experience. He ordered an expensive bottle of wine, caviar appetizers, before ordering their main course, but despite his efforts, Susan seemed uninterested and distant. She barely spoke during dinner and refused to look him in the eye. After that night, Simon made a promise to himself that he will try even harder to have his wife fall back in love with him. Simon's gestures of love were countless. He surprised Susan with a beautiful house, carefully selected to suit her needs. Yet, rather than expressing gratitude, Susan criticized the size, claiming it wasn't spacious enough for her extravagant desires. Hoping to please her further, Simon gifted her a brand new car, only to be met with complaints about the lack of a convertible roof. Finally, Simon had enough and decided that he no longer wanted to be around Susan's nagging anymore. He felt it was time to invest more of his time in his work. Simon used this newfound time to work on a project he had been putting off for some time, a large-scale model with the latest technology on the market. He poured all of his energy into this model, spending hours a day working on it with almost no rest in between. He soon became obsessed with the project and was even willing to sacrifice relationships with others close to him for more time with the model. One fateful evening, as Simon returned home from work early, his heart shattered upon discovering Susan entwined in an affair with his supposed best friend, Sean. He is overwhelmed by shock and disbelief and stands frozen in place. Susan and Sean look up at him, guilty expressions on their faces. Simon finally makes a move and lunges at Sean, pushing him out of bed and punching him in the face. He then turns to Susan, demanding an explanation. She tries to explain, but he doesn't want to hear it. He just wants to know how long this has been going on for. Sean takes this opportunity to try to explain himself, but Simon pushes him aside again before he can finish. Simon keeps asking how long this has been going on for, and each time Susan starts explaining the timeline of events, Simon interrupts her and raises his voice louder and louder until finally he storms out of the room in a rage. Susan chases after him, desperately trying to get him to listen to her, but he won't stop. The betrayal cut deep, and Simon found himself questioning the foundation of their relationship. It was in that heart-wrenching moment that Simon made a life-altering decision. Summoning courage from the depths of his soul, Simon realized that enough was enough. He realized that his own well-being mattered just as much as anyone else's. He chose to put his foot down, setting out on a journey of self-discovery and healing. Embracing his newfound freedom, Simon liberated himself from the shackles of an unfulfilling marriage. Though the road ahead appeared daunting, his spirit was resilient. He delved into new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and focused on personal growth. With each passing day, the weight on his shoulders lightened and his smile grew wider. Simon channeled his energy into his career, excelling beyond his previous achievements. The absence of Susan's constant complaints and demands allowed him to flourish professionally. The burden of being the sole provider lifted, enabling Simon to save money and invest in profitable ventures. With time, Simon's perseverance and resilience transformed him into a radiant beacon of positivity. His happiness radiated from within, attracting new opportunities and genuine friendships. He discovered that his worth wasn't defined by the love of another, but by the love he had for himself. As Simon basked in the joy of his newfound freedom, his journey inspired others. Friends and acquaintances witnessed his transformation and drew strength from his story. Simon's tale served as a reminder that sometimes putting oneself first is an act of self-love and a catalyst for personal growth. In the end, Simon's decision to break free from an ungrateful and toxic relationship proved to be the turning point in his life. He triumphed over adversity and emerged as a beacon of hope, reminding everyone that true happiness can be found by standing up for oneself and pursuing a life filled with authenticity and self-care. This is the story of Simon and his ungrateful wife. Thank you for watching and see you next week.